We are slaves in the promised land. Something is wrong with that picture, and yet that is precisely what God's people confessed. When many of the Israelites returned from exile to the promised land and worked under a leader named Nehemiah to rebuild the wall around the city of Jerusalem, and then gathered as a community to listen to a scribe named Ezra read God's law, they realized something depressing. They were still slaves. They were living in the land which was supposed to be home, and yet they were pitiful slaves. God's people cried out to him, "We are slaves today, slaves in the land you gave our forefathers so they could eat its fruit and the other good things it produces. Because of our sins, its abundant harvest goes to the kings you have placed over us. They rule over our bodies and our cattle as they please. We are in great distress." God's people have been in this position before, when they were in Egypt. God had delivered them from Egypt, though, and led them out of that slavery and brought them into a land of freedom. But they eventually found themselves slaves again, in Assyria, in Babylon, and now in the Promised Land. When Israel had gone into exile, the poorest of the people had been left behind to farm the land. When the exiles returned, the scene didn't change much. The Israelites worked in the fields and carried out all the hard agricultural labor, but the Assyrians and Babylonians and Persians and Medes and everyone else enjoyed the harvest. The Israelites sowed the seeds, tilled the soil, harvested the crops, but others feasted on the fruit of their labor. Slaves in the Promised Land. Something is indeed wrong with that picture. God's people realized an important truth that former generations didn't, though. They were in their miserable condition because of their sin. Whether living in Egypt or Babylon or in the Promised Land, slavery was following God's people, because slavery follows sin. Home and slavery cannot coexist, and their differences cannot be reconciled. Hundreds of years after Israel returned from exile, someone came along and worded it this way: "I tell you the truth, everyone who sins is a slave to sin. Now a slave has no permanent place in the family, but a son belongs to it forever." We are born with a desire to belong, and so we love the feeling of belonging to a good community, a winning sports team, an exclusive club, or a charitable organization. More than anything else, though, we desire to belong to a family, and to belong to that family forever. Equal to our love for the feeling of belonging is our fear and anxiety of removal, of rejection, of banishment, of isolation, of being unwanted. We desire to be part of a family, but not temporarily, not as a slave who doesn't have the full rights of membership and thus can be cast aside at any moment. We want to belong permanently. We want to be a son or a daughter. Only then will we be home. But is there a way? If we are slaves to sin, how do we break free? How do we become sons and daughters of an eternal family? How do we find the way home to where we truly belong?